You want to know about a song, a specific song, and you want to know if Elvis Presley thought it came from God. The answer isn't simple. It's not a yes or no, but it's a story, and it's a story that gets to the very heart of who that man was. Not the star, not the icon, but the man. To get there, you have to forget the white jumpsuit for a minute. Forget the movies and the screaming girls. You have to go way back to Tupelo, Mississippi. To a little house, to a boy and his mother. Elvis grew up poor. That's not just a line in a biography. It was real. It was dirt floors and not enough to eat. But they had something. They had church, and in that church, they had music. It wasn't quiet, polite music. It was loud. It was full of feeling. It was people stomping their feet and clapping their hands. It was sweat and tears and joy. It was gospel music. This was his first music. Before rock and roll. Before the blues he heard on the other side of the track. This was the music that shaped his soul. He'd sit in those services, a little kid, and just soak it in. The harmonies, the power of the voices, the way a song could lift people up out of their hard lives, even for just a little while. He saw what music could do to a person. He felt it. His mother Gladys loved this music. And Elvis loved his mother more than anyone on earth, so he loved it too. They would sing together. He learned to feel the spirit moving in a song. It wasn't about hitting the notes perfectly. It was about meaning it. It was about believing what you were singing. That was lesson number 1, and he never forgot it. Then, everything changed. He made a record. Then another. Suddenly, he was famous. Not just famous. He was the most famous person in the world. It was a hurricane of money, noise, and people. Everyone wanted something from him. He was pulled in 1,000 different directions. The boy from the little church in Tupelo was gone. In his place was the king of rock and roll. But was he really gone? Inside, he was still that boy. He still loved gospel music. When he was away from the crowds, away from the cameras, that's what he turned to. After a show in Vegas, when the energy was still buzzing, he wouldn't go out and party like you'd think. He'd gather some of his band, some of his backup singers, and they would go up to his suite. They would sit around a piano, and they would sing. They didn't sing his hit. They didn't sing Hound Dog or Jailhouse Rock. They sang the old gospel songs. They sang for hours until the sun came up. This was his church now. This was where he connected with something real. It was his way of coming home. The people who were there said it was incredible. Here was the biggest star on the planet, and all he wanted to do was sing these old hymns. His voice, which could snarl and shake and make girls faint, would become something else. It would become pure. It would become reverent. He wasn't performing. He was worshiping. And then there was this one song. It wasn't a song from his childhood. It was something he came to later. It was a hymn, an old one, but he heard a newer version by a gospel group he admired, J.D. Sumner and the Stamps Quartet. J.D. had one of the lowest bass voices you've ever heard, and Elvis loved him. He eventually hired them to be his backup group, and they brought the song with them. The first time he really worked on it, something happened. It wasn't just another song to add to the gospel album. It was different. The song itself is a journey. It starts quietly. It's about looking at the world. The stars, the trees, the mountains. It's about feeling small in the face of all that creation. It's about hearing the thunder and feeling a sense of awe. Then the song shifts. It becomes more personal. It talks about the sacrifice, about the cross. It's a moment of deep personal faith. And then the final part of the journey. It looks to the future. To a time of going home, of no more pain, of endless joy. It's a powerful story packed into a few verses, and it builds. The music starts simple, and then it grows and grows. It demands a huge vocal range. It demands real power. Not just loud singing, but power that comes from deep inside. Elvis connected with it deeply. When he recorded it in the studio in 1966, the session was different. The musicians felt it. He wasn't just singing lyrics on a page, he was living them. When he got to the big soaring ending, the power in his voice was staggering. He poured every bit of his faith, his doubt, his hope, and his pain into that performance. When they finished the take, the studio was silent for a moment. They knew they had captured something special. Not just a good vocal, something more. That recording won him his first Grammy Award. Think about that. Elvis Presley, the man who had sold more records than anyone, the man who defined a whole generation of music, had never won a Grammy for his rock and roll. His first one came for this gospel song. It was validation. Not from the screaming fans, but from the industry itself. And it was for the music that mattered most to him. But the studio version was just the beginning. The real story of this song happened on stage. In the 1970s, his live shows were huge. The orchestra, the lights, the jumpsuits. He would sing his big hits, the crowd would go wild. But then, somewhere in the middle of the show, the mood would change. The lights would dim. He would turn to the band, take a drink of water, and get very serious. The audience would get quiet. They knew something different was coming, and then he would begin the song. He would start it soft, almost a whisper. He would stand still. The usual hip shaking and swagger were gone. He was completely focused. His eyes would often be closed. He was going somewhere else in his head. Back to that little church, maybe. As the song built, his voice would build with it. The orchestra would swell behind him. The backup singers would create a wall of sound. But his voice was always right there, out front, clear and strong. He wasn't just singing the notes. He was testifying. People who saw him perform it live say it was like nothing else in the show. It was a religious experience. Even for people who weren't religious, you could see the conviction on his face. You could feel the raw emotion in his voice. This wasn't an act. This was real. This was him laid bare for everyone to see. The climax of the song is a huge, powerful note. It requires incredible breath control and strength. He would plant his feet, lean back, and just let it go. And he would hold it. The note would fill the entire arena. It seemed to hang in the air forever. In that moment, he wasn't a rock star. He was a force of nature, just like the thunder the song talks about. After that final, massive note, he would often be visibly shaken. He would be out of breath, sometimes bent over, holding the microphone stand. The audience would erupt. A standing ovation, but he barely seemed to notice. It was like he had just run a marathon. He had given every single thing he had to that song. His friends and bandmates told stories about it. One night, after a particularly powerful performance of the song, he came off stage and was emotional. He felt like the spirit god, whatever you want to call it, had been right there with him. He said something like, "I'll never sing another song after that one." He meant for the night. He felt that nothing could possibly follow it. How could you sing about blue suede shoes after you had just touched the face of God? So did he believe the song was sent from God? He probably wouldn't have used those exact words. He was a humble man when it came to his faith, but he believed the song was a vessel. It was a channel. It was a way for him and for the audience to connect with something holy. He saw himself as a messenger when he sang it. He wasn't the source of the power was flowing through him. The song was the tool God gave him to deliver that message. In his mind, the song was perfect. It said everything that needed to be said about faith, awe, and salvation. It was so complete, so powerful, that it felt like it had to be divinely inspired. It wasn't just a clever combination of words and music, it was truth, and his job was to deliver that truth with as much honesty and passion as he could. He won another Grammy for a live version of the song, recorded in Memphis. Again, the world was rewarding him not for the persona, but for the soul. It's a strange paradox. He was trapped by his own fame. He was lonely and isolated in his mansion. He struggled with personal demons, with prescription drugs, with his health. His life was a mess in many ways, and yet, every night, he could walk out on stage and sing this song. And for those few minutes, none of the other stuff mattered. He could connect to that pure, simple faith he had as a boy. The song was his refuge. It was his prayer. It was his confession. It was his way of saying, "I'm still here. I still believe." Think about the lyrics he was singing. "When I, in awesome wonder, consider all the worlds thy hands have made." This was a man who had the world at his feet. He had everything anyone could ever want. But in this song, he made himself small. He looked up at the stars and was humbled. It was his way of keeping perspective, of remembering that there was something bigger than Elvis Presley. And then the part about the cross. "That on the cross my burden gladly bearing. He bled and died to take away my sin." In private, Elvis was carrying a heavy burden. The burden of fame, the burden of expectation, the burden of his own mistakes. When he sang those words, he wasn't just reciting a line from a hymn, he was crying out. He was finding release. He felt that forgiveness in the song. The song gave him strength. It recentered him. In a life that was spinning out of control, this song was his anchor. It was the one thing that was always true. So, when we ask if he thought the song was sent from God, maybe we're asking the wrong question. It's not about where the song came from, it's about what the song did for him. It was his direct line. It was his personal conversation with his maker. He didn't just sing the song, he inhabited it. He prayed it. Towards the end of his life, things got harder. The shows were not always as good. He was tired, he was sick, but he still sang the song. And even on a bad night when his energy was low, something would shift when he started it. He would find a reserve of strength from somewhere deep inside. He had to do it justice. He owed it to the song. He owed it to God. There's a reason this song, out of all the hundreds he recorded, is the one people talk about in this way. There's a reason it won him his only personal performance Grammys. There's a reason people who saw him live remember it so vividly. Because it was the moment in the show when the mask came off. It was the moment you saw the real man. A searching, flawed, but deeply faithful man, using the gift he had been given to try and touch the face of his creator. For him, it was more than a song. It was a testament. It was proof. He looked at the chaos of his life, and then he looked at the simple, profound truth in that hymn, and he knew which one was real. The song was the truth. He believed the gift of his voice came from God, and he believed that this particular song was the highest and best use of that gift. It was the reason he was given that voice in the first place, to stand in front of thousands of people and deliver this message of awe and redemption. So, yes, in a way he did. He acted like it was sent from God. He treated it with a reverence he didn't give to any other piece of music. It was holy to him. It was his cathedral. The song was How Great Thou Art.